A poor 12-year-old black girl saved a billionaire, but what he whispered made her cry. Welcome to Tales by Ezra. Let's uncover what really happened. The chipped paint of the Oakhaven apartments peeled like sunburnt skin, revealing layers of forgotten colors beneath. 12-year-old Maya traced a loose flake with her finger, her mind a universe away from the cracked asphalt of the courtyard where younger children shrieked and chased a deflated soccer ball. Their laughter, usually a bright thread in the often gray tapestry of her days, felt distant. Maya carried a quiet weight, a maturity that settled on her slender shoulders not by choice but by necessity. Her mother worked 2, sometimes 3, low-wage jobs, a tired smile her only consistent offering when she returned home long after Maya and her younger brother, Leo, were asleep. Leo, with his wide, trusting eyes and a laugh that could melt glaciers, also carried his own fragility. A severe allergy to bee stings that had once turned a joyful park outing into a terrifying race against time. That day, Maya, then only 9, had watched, heart-hammering, as her mother fumbled with the auto-injector, her hands shaking too badly. It was Maya who had taken it, her small voice steady as she read the instructions aloud, her small hands surprisingly firm as she administered the life-saving medicine. Since then, the spare injector, carefully wrapped, lived in Maya's worn backpack, a constant companion, a silent responsibility. She was a keen observer, this girl with eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. She noticed the way Mrs. Henderson from 3B always sighed before unlocking her door, the way the stray cat with one torn ear favored its left paw, the precise moment the sun dipped behind the water tower, painting the drab buildings in hues of orange and purple, a fleeting, breathtaking beauty that Maya hoarded in her memory. She found solace in books borrowed from the underfunded school library, tales of distant lands and courageous heroines, worlds where a girl like her could be more than just another face in a struggling neighborhood. Her own dreams were small, practical, a stable job for her mom, enough food so Leo never had to eat watery soup for dinner, perhaps, one day, a little house with a small garden, far from the sirens and the constant thrum of city struggles. She possessed an innate intelligence, a quick grasp of concepts that often surprised her teachers. But Oakhaven wasn't a place where potential was easily nurtured. It was a place where survival often overshadowed aspiration. Today, however, her thoughts were on the upcoming science fair. She had an idea, a simple water filtration system using charcoal and sand, something she'd read about, something that felt important in a world where clean water wasn't a given for everyone. She sketched designs in a tattered notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration, the cacophony of the courtyard fading into a dull roar. She was meticulous, her drawings neat, her notes precise. This project was more than just a school assignment. It was a spark, a tiny flicker of her own agency in a life largely dictated by external forces. She was unaware that the threads of her quiet existence were about to become entangled with a life so vastly different from her own, it might as well have been from another galaxy. A few miles away, but a world apart, Arthur Harrington III, a man whose net worth was often a subject of speculative articles in financial journals, stared unseeingly at a set of blueprints. His penthouse office, a sterile expanse of glass and steel, offered a panoramic view of the city that he rarely appreciated. He was a man accustomed to control, to schedules mapped out in minute increments, to a world that bent to his will, or at least to the considerable weight of his fortune. Today, however, a rare sliver of unstructured time had appeared in his calendar, a canceled meeting, an unexpected void. His driver was late, caught in the city's notorious crosstown traffic. Impatient and uncharacteristically impulsive, Mr. Harrington had decided to take a walk, a short stroll to a nearby park he hadn't visited since his own childhood, a place he vaguely remembered as an oasis of green. He was dressed in a bespoke suit that cost more than Maya's family earned in a year, his shoes gleaming, his thoughts already on the afternoon's teleconference with Tokyo. He was not a man who often ventured into neighborhoods like Oakhaven. His world was one of polished boardrooms, exclusive clubs, and private jets. The realities of poverty were an abstraction, something his charitable foundation addressed through carefully vetted grants and impersonal donations. He wouldn't have recognized the resilience blooming in the cracks of Oakhaven's sidewalks, nor the quiet dignity of its residents. He was preoccupied, his mind sifting through currency fluctuations and market analyses, the vibrant, chaotic life of the city streets a mere backdrop to his internal calculations. His path, however, driven by a forgotten memory and a moment of uncharacteristic restlessness, was leading him closer to the faded brick walls of the Oakhaven apartments, and to a young girl sketching dreams of clean water in a tattered notebook, a girl who carried not just her own hopes, but the responsibility for her brother's breath in a small, worn backpack. The two worlds, separated by chasms of wealth and experience, were on an unforeseen collision course, orchestrated by the whims of chance and the subtle, often invisible, currents that shape human destiny. The encounter was not one of design, but of pure, unadulterated chance, the kind that fiction writers often employ, but real life occasionally and dramatically delivers. Mr. Harrington, having found the small park of his childhood memories less idyllic and more neglected than he recalled, was walking back towards a busier thoroughfare where he hoped to hail a cab. His driver was still hopelessly ensnared in traffic. He cut through a narrow alleyway, a shortcut according to the map on his phone, that skirted the edge of a community garden adjacent to the Oakhaven apartments. It was here, amidst overgrown tomato plants and the faint scent of marigolds, that fate intervened. A rogue bee, disturbed from its labor in a patch of clover, buzzed angrily around Mr. Harrington's head. He swatted at it, annoyed, a gesture he would instantly regret. The bee, incensed, landed on his exposed neck and delivered a sharp, painful sting. Mr. Harrington yelped, a sound unbefitting a man of his stature, and slapped at his neck again, killing the insect. He muttered a curse, expecting nothing more than a minor irritation. He had been stung before, years ago, with no ill effect. But this time was different. Within minutes, an alarming heat began to spread from the sting's site. His neck felt tight, his breathing suddenly, inexplicably shallow. A strange metallic taste filled his mouth. He leaned against the graffitied wall of the alley, a wave of dizziness washing over him. He was a man who prided himself on his robust health, his disciplined lifestyle. This sudden, violent rebellion of his own body was terrifyingly alien. Maya, having decided to seek a quieter spot for her science fair planning, had wandered into the community garden. It was a small patch of green she cherished, a place where things grew, a symbol of hope amidst the urban decay. She was sitting on an overturned bucket near the far fence, her notebook open on her lap, when she saw the man. He was impeccably dressed, clearly out of place, leaning heavily against the wall, his face rapidly turning a blotchy red. His breath was coming in ragged gasps. She recognized the signs instantly, the terrible, familiar signals of anaphylaxis. Leo's face, pale and struggling for air, flashed in her mind. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to engulf her, but years of ingrained responsibility, the memory of her own mother's helplessness, pushed it back. She was on her feet in an instant, her worn backpack already sliding from her shoulders. "Sir," she called out, her young voice cutting through his fog of distress. "Sir, are you okay? Did you get stung by a bee?" Mr. Harrington barely registered her, his vision blurring, his throat constricting. He clawed weakly at his collar, a sound like a rusty hinge escaping his lips. Maya didn't wait for an answer. She fumbled with the zipper of her backpack, her fingers surprisingly nimble despite the tremor running through them. The spare EpiPen, Leo's lifeline, her constant charge, was in her hand. "I have medicine," she said, her voice louder now, trying to pierce through his disorientation. "It can help." She remembered the steps, drilled into her by countless anxious reminders from her mother and the allergy clinic nurse. Check the expiry date. Good. Blue to the sky, orange to the thigh. She uncapped the auto-injector. The man was starting to slump, his expensive suit crumpling. There was no time to ask for permission, no time for hesitation. This was life or death, A stark equation she understood with a clarity far beyond her years. "This might hurt a little," she said, more to herself than to him. Her voice a strange mixture of childish treble and adult resolve. She positioned the orange tip against his outer thigh, right through the fine wool of his trousers, and pushed. The click of the injector was a small, decisive sound in the sudden, terrifying silence of the alley. She held it in place for the count of 10, her lips moving silently, a prayer and a procedure intertwined. Then she withdrew it, carefully placing the used injector beside her on the ground. She looked at the man, his breathing still labored but perhaps, just perhaps, a fraction less desperate. "Help is coming," she said, though she hadn't called anyone yet. Her own phone was a cheap, pay-as-you-go model with no credit. "You have to stay awake." She looked around wildly. The garden was deserted. The alley was empty. She was alone with a dying billionaire, a 12-year-old girl armed with nothing but a used EpiPen and a courage she didn't know she possessed. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Mr. Harrington's eyes fluttered open, a flicker of awareness in their clouded depths. He saw a young black girl, her face a mask of anxious concern, her eyes wide and intelligent, kneeling beside him. He tried to speak, but only a wheeze emerged. The world was a distorted, muffled nightmare. Maya knew the epinephrine was not a cure, only a temporary reprieve. She needed to get proper medical help, and fast. "Is there anyone I can call for you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly now that the immediate crisis of administering the shot had passed. "Your phone." He made a weak gesture towards his inside jacket pocket. Her small hands fumbled, then retrieved the sleek, expensive smartphone. It was locked with a passcode. Useless. She looked up and down the alley again. Still nothing. The distant wail of a siren, probably unrelated, taunted her. She thought of running to the street, of screaming for help, but she didn't want to leave him alone. What if he stopped breathing altogether? She placed 2 fingers on his wrist, feeling for a pulse as the nurse had shown her. It was thready, too fast, but it was there. "It's working a little," she whispered, trying to reassure both him and herself. "The medicine is helping. Just breathe. Try to breathe slow." He seemed to focus on her voice, his gaze locking onto hers. There was a desperate plea in his eyes, a raw vulnerability she had never seen in an adult before, let alone one who looked like he owned the world. It was the look of a human being stripped bare of all pretense, facing his own mortality. In that moment, he wasn't a billionaire, and she wasn't a poor girl from the projects. They were just 2 souls caught in a terrifying drama, one fighting for life, the other fighting to preserve it. The silence of the alley pressed in, broken only by Mr. Harrington's ragged breathing and Maya's soft, encouraging murmurs. She could feel the adrenaline ebbing, leaving behind a shaky exhaustion, but she knew she couldn't relax. She had done what she could with the EpiPen. Now it was a waiting game, a desperate race against the clock for more advanced help to arrive. She scanned the area again, her eyes sharp. The community garden was bordered by a chain-link fence, and beyond that, the back of a small convenience store. Perhaps someone there could call for an ambulance. "I'm going to get help," she told Mr. Harrington, her voice firmer than she felt. "Don't go to sleep. I'll be right back." He made a small, almost imperceptible nod, his eyes still fixed on her. She hesitated for a split second, then scrambled to her feet and ran towards the convenience store, her worn sneakers pounding against the cracked pavement, leaving the powerful Arthur Harrington vulnerable and utterly dependent on the swift return of a 12-year-old girl. The door of the convenience store jingled as Maya burst in, breathless and wide-eyed. The clerk, a bored-looking teenager scrolling on his phone, glanced up with disinterest. "There's a man," Maya panted. "He's really sick. In the alley by the garden. He got stung by a bee. I think he needs an ambulance." "Fust." The clerk raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "A drunk, probably." "No," Maya insisted, her voice rising with urgency. "He's not drunk. He's having a bad reaction. I gave him an EpiPen, but he needs more help. Please, can you call 911? Her earnestness, the sheer panic in her eyes, finally seemed to penetrate his apathy. He sighed, put down his phone, and reached for the store's landline. As he made the call, Maya raced back to the alley, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and a sliver of hope. Mr. Harrington was still there, his breathing still shallow, but his eyes were open, tracking her return. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled her knees, washed over her. He was still alive. She knelt beside him again, instinctively taking his hand. It felt cold, clammy. "They're calling for help," she said, her voice a little breathless. "An ambulance is coming." He tried to squeeze her hand, a faint pressure that spoke volumes. The minutes crawled by. Maya talked to him, a steady stream of words about anything and everything. Her science project, her little brother Leo, the funny way the squirrels chased each other in the park. Anything to keep him tethered to consciousness, to keep his focus on her voice rather than the terrifying sensations overwhelming his body. She described the colors of the sunset she'd seen the night before, the way the light made the drab buildings look like they were made of gold. She didn't know if he was truly listening, but she felt an overwhelming need to fill the silence, to fight back the encroaching shadows with the simple power of her words. Finally, the distant wail of a siren grew closer, louder, culminating in the flashing lights of an ambulance arriving at the mouth of the alley. 2 paramedics rushed in with a gurney and equipment, their movements efficient and practiced. They took one look at Mr. Harrington, at the discarded EpiPen on the ground, and immediately began assessing him. "Who administered the epinephrine?" One of them asked, glancing at Maya. "I did," Maya said, her voice small. "It's my brother's. He has allergies too." The paramedic nodded, his expression serious. "You did good, kid. You probably saved his life." Those words, simple and direct, sent a shiver down Maya's spine. Saved his life. The enormity of it began to sink in. The paramedics worked quickly, hooking Mr. Harrington up to oxygen, starting in 4. As they prepared to lift him onto the gurney, Mr. Harrington's eyes found Maya's again. His lips moved, and this time, a faint, raspy sound emerged. "Your name?" "Maya," she whispered. "Maya Johnson." He nodded, his gaze intense. Then, as they were wheeling him away, he reached out a trembling hand, his fingers brushing against hers. His voice was barely audible, a mere thread of sound. "Thank you," he breathed. And then he added something else, something that made her heart skip a beat, something she would replay in her mind 1,000 times. "Wait for me." The ambulance doors slammed shut, and it sped away, sirens screaming, leaving Maya standing alone in the alley, the discarded EpiPen and the lingering scent of fear her only companions. The adrenaline drained away completely, replaced by a profound, bone-deep weariness. She picked up the used injector, her movements mechanical. What did he mean, "wait for me"? She was just a girl from Oakhaven. He was someone else entirely. She slowly walked back towards her apartment, the weight of the afternoon settling upon her. She had faced death, stared it down, and acted with a courage she hadn't known she possessed. But now, in the aftermath, she just felt small and tired. She knew she should tell her mother, but she wasn't sure how. How did you explain saving a stranger's life with your little brother's medicine? How did you explain the look in that man's eyes, or the impossible whisper that now echoed in the quiet corners of her mind? The days that followed the incident in the alley blurred into a semblance of normalcy. Yet everything felt subtly altered for Maya. The weight of Mr. Harrington's whispered words, "Wait for me," pressed upon her thoughts, a strange and unsettling promise. She tried to dismiss it as the ramblings of a man in severe distress, but the intensity in his gaze had been undeniable. She continued with her schoolwork, helped her mother with Leo, and diligently worked on her science fair project, yet a part of her mind was constantly replaying the dramatic rescue, the feel of Mr. Harrington's cold hand, the almost inaudible rasp of his voice. She found herself glancing down the alleyway by the community garden whenever she passed, a half-formed expectation flickering in her chest, an expectation she quickly tried to extinguish. Life in Oakhaven, with its predictable rhythms of struggle and small joys, was not a place where billionaires made return appearances. Meanwhile, Arthur Harrington III was recovering in a private hospital suite that resembled a luxury hotel room more than a medical facility. The anaphylactic shock had been severe. The doctors reiterated that Maya's quick action with the EpiPen had been unequivocally life-saving. As the fog of medication and trauma lifted, his mind replayed the events with increasing clarity. He remembered the sudden, terrifying constriction in his throat, the overwhelming panic, and then, like an angel of mercy, the appearance of a young girl. He recalled her calm, authoritative voice, her surprisingly steady hands, the intelligence in her wide, dark eyes. He remembered her name, Maya Johnson, and he remembered his own desperate, whispered plea for her to wait. It hadn't been a mere platitude. In those terrifying moments when his life hung in the balance, Maya had been his anchor, his only hope. Her courage, her resourcefulness, in the face of such a crisis, had moved him profoundly. He, a man who controlled vast resources and commanded legions of employees, had been utterly helpless, saved by a child from a neighborhood he would normally have driven through with his windows up and doors locked, if he drove through it all. The irony was not lost on him. A deep sense of gratitude, mingled with a new and unsettling awareness of his own vulnerability, settled within him. He was not a man given to overt displays of emotion, but the experience had shaken him to his core. As soon as he was coherent, he summoned his most trusted aide, a discreet and efficient man named Peterson. "Peterson," he said, his voice still weak but firm, "I need you to find someone for me. A young girl named Maya Johnson. She lives in or near the Oakhaven apartments. She's about 12 years old, African American. She saved my life." Peterson, accustomed to his employer's unusual requests, simply nodded. "Do you have any further details, sir?" She mentioned a younger brother, Leo, who also has allergies. "She used his EpiPen on me. She was in the community garden alleyway." Mr. Harrington paused, then added, "And Peterson, be discreet. I don't want a media circus. This is personal." The search began. Peterson, with the resources of Harrison Global Ventures at his disposal, was thorough. He cross-referenced school records, community center registrations, local directories. Oakhaven was a densely populated area, and Johnson was a common name. There were several Maya Johnsons in the vicinity. For Maya, life went on. She won second place in the school science fair, a small ribbon that her mother pinned proudly above their kitchen table. Leo, oblivious to how his spare EpiPen had been used, continued to charm everyone with his infectious giggle. Maya told her mother a carefully edited version of the events, omitting Mr. Harrington's wealth and his final words, focusing instead on the fact that she had helped someone who was sick. Her mother, while proud of Maya's bravery, was also terrified by the thought of what could have happened, and gently chided her for using Leo's precious medicine, though her eyes shone with unshed tears of relief that Maya was okay and had done such a brave thing. Weeks turned into a month. The memory of the man in the alley began to fade, softened by the routines of daily life. Maya started to believe she had imagined the intensity of his words, or perhaps misunderstood them. Then, one late afternoon, as she was helping Mrs. Henderson carry her groceries up the stairs, a sleek black car, utterly out of place in the Oakhaven parking lot, pulled up. A man in a suit, Peterson, emerged and approached her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice polite. "Are you Maya Johnson?" Maya's heart did a strange flip. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a squeak. "Mr. Arthur Harrington would be very grateful if you and your mother would agree to meet with him. He wishes to thank you personally for your extraordinary assistance." Maya stared at him, speechless. He hadn't forgotten. He had actually sent someone to find her. The impossible was happening. The meeting was arranged for the following Saturday at a neutral location, a quiet suite in a downtown hotel, not Mr. Harrington's opulent penthouse, a concession, Peterson explained, to make Maya and her mother more comfortable. Maya's mother, a pragmatic woman named Sarah, was deeply skeptical and more than a little intimidated. She insisted on bringing her sister, Maya's Aunt Carol, for support. Maya herself felt a confusing mix of excitement and dread. What did one wear to meet a billionaire one had saved from a bee sting? Her best dress, a hand-me-down from a cousin, suddenly felt woefully inadequate. When they entered the hotel suite, Mr. Harrington was standing by the window, much like he had been in his office that day weeks ago. He looked healthier now, his color normal, though perhaps a little thinner. He turned as they entered, and his eyes immediately found Maya's. A small, almost shy smile touched his lips. "Maya," he said, his voice much stronger now, but still carrying a warmth she remembered. "It is so very good to see you again." Sarah Johnson, though initially wary, found herself disarmed by Mr. Harrington's quiet sincerity. He didn't act like the powerful, intimidating figure she imagined billionaires to be. He spoke to Maya first, his gratitude palpable. "I've said it before, Maya, but I will say it again. You saved my life. There are no words sufficient to express my debt to you." Maya fidgeted, her gaze fixed on her worn sneakers. "I just did what anyone would do," she mumbled. "No, Maya," Mr. Harrington said gently. "Not everyone would have the courage, or the presence of mind, or the knowledge. You acted when others might have panicked or frozen. You were extraordinary." He then turned to Sarah and Aunt Carol, explaining the severity of his allergic reaction, the certainty of the doctors that Maya's intervention had been critical. He spoke of his immense gratitude, his desire to show his appreciation in a tangible way. He mentioned a monetary reward, a sum that made Sarah gasp, enough to lift them out of Oakhaven, to ease so many of their burdens. Sarah, overwhelmed, looked at Maya. Maya, however, seemed almost oblivious to the talk of money. She was still caught on his earlier words. "You were extraordinary." No one had ever called her that before. Mr. Harrington seemed to sense her abstraction. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping, drawing her into a more personal space, even with her mother and aunt present. "Maya," he said, his eyes holding hers, "the money is a small token. It can help with immediate needs, of course. But what you did, it showed me something about you. Something far more valuable than any amount of money." Maya looked up, her eyes wide and questioning. He paused, and then he said the words that would irrevocably alter the course of her young life. The words that brought a sudden, unexpected sting to her eyes, blurring the image of the kind-faced billionaire before her. "You have the heart of a hero, Maya," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "And you have the mind of a leader. I saw it in that alley, and I believe the world needs to see it too." Tears welled in Maya's eyes, spilling over and tracing silent paths down her cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness, or even solely of relief at the prospect of financial security. They were tears of a profound, overwhelming recognition. Someone saw her. Not just Maya from Oakhaven, not just Leo's responsible older sister, not just a poor black girl. He saw her potential, her spirit, her very essence. He saw something in her that she had barely dared to dream about for herself. "I want to help you, Maya," Mr. Harrington continued, his voice still soft. "Not just with money. I want to ensure you have every opportunity to develop that incredible mind, to nurture that heroic heart. I want to offer you a full scholarship to any school, any university you choose, all the way through. I want to be your mentor, if you'll allow me. I want to help you build whatever future you can imagine." Sarah Johnson was openly weeping now, her hand gripping her sister's tightly. Aunt Carol's eyes were shining, but Maya's gaze was locked on Mr. Harrington. The whispered words, the heart of a hero, the mind of a leader, echoed in her soul. It was more than an offer. It was a validation, a belief in her so powerful it felt like a physical force. The tears continued to flow, but now, a small, watery smile began to bloom on Maya's face. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a narrow, predetermined path, but like a vast, open horizon, filled with terrifying and wonderful possibilities. And it all started with a bee sting, a tattered backpack, and a whisper that changed everything. The offer Mr. Harrington laid before Maya and her family was more than just a lifeline. It was a complete re-architecting of their future. The scholarship was comprehensive, covering tuition, books, living expenses, anything Maya might need to pursue her education without the crushing burden of financial worry. Beyond that, Mr. Harrington proposed setting up a trust fund for Leo's future education and medical needs, and he offered Sarah Johnson assistance in finding more stable, better-paying employment, or even support if she wished to pursue further training herself. It was a gesture of such profound generosity that it left Sarah and Aunt Carol speechless, tears of disbelief and gratitude streaming down their faces. For Maya, the immediate implications were overwhelming. The idea of attending a top-tier private school, which Mr. Harrington's aide, Peterson, had already discreetly researched as a possibility, was both exhilarating and terrifying. The pristine uniforms, the sprawling campuses she'd only seen in movies, the assumption of academic rigor. It was a world away from Oakhaven Elementary. Her tears, initially sparked by Mr. Harrington's profound belief in her, now mingled with a dawning understanding of the sheer magnitude of the change being offered. "What?" Maya finally managed to ask, her voice still thick with emotion, her gaze searching Mr. Harrington's face. "Why are you doing all of this for us?" Mr. Harrington's expression softened. "Maya, when you face your own mortality, your perspective on life, on what truly matters, tends to shift. You didn't just save my life. You reminded me of the profound impact one individual can have, regardless of their age or circumstances. You showed me courage and compassion when I was at my most vulnerable. Consider this not just a reward, but an investment in a young woman I believe will go on to do remarkable things." And selfishly, he added, a wry smile touching his lips, "I hope to be around to see some of them." The decision, while monumental, was not difficult for Sarah Johnson to make. The opportunity for Maya, for Leo, was a gift from heaven, an answer to prayer she had whispered in the dark for years. There were anxieties, of course. How would Maya adjust? Would she be accepted? Would this new world change her? But the hope far outweighed the fear. Maya, too, after the initial shock, felt a burgeoning excitement. The fear of the unknown was undeniably present, a knot in her stomach, but it was overshadowed by the thrill of possibility. "The mind of a leader," Mr. Harrington's words echoed. Perhaps she could be. Perhaps she could make a difference, not just for her family, but for others too. The transition was carefully managed by Peterson, who proved to be not just an efficient aide, but also a surprisingly kind and reassuring presence. He helped Sarah navigate the complexities of setting up bank accounts and understanding trust documents. He arranged for Maya to visit Northwood Academy, the prestigious private school they had identified, to meet with the admissions director and some of the teachers. Maya walked through Northwood's hallowed halls, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The students, in their crisp uniforms, seemed so confident, so articulate. The library was larger than any building in her neighborhood. Yet, the teachers she met were welcoming, impressed by her quiet intelligence and the glowing, though discreetly worded, letter of recommendation Mr. Harrington had personally written. The first few months at Northwood were a period of intense adjustment. Maya was academically bright and caught on quickly, but the social dynamics were a different challenge. She was acutely aware of her background, of the differences between her experiences and those of her affluent classmates. There were moments of loneliness, of feeling like an outsider peering in. Some students were curious and kind, others more cliquish and standoffish. One girl, whose father was a prominent city lawyer, made a snide comment about Maya's scholarship status that stung deeply. But Maya, drawing on the resilience honed in Oakhaven, refused to be cowed. She focused on her studies, her natural curiosity and love of learning blossoming in an environment rich with resources. She found solace in the science labs, where her passion for discovery could take flight, and in the library, where she devoured books with a hunger that impressed her teachers. Mr. Harrington became a steady presence in her life, a mentor in the truest sense. They met for lunch once a month. He never condescended or overwhelmed her with advice. Instead, he listened. He asked her about her classes, her challenges, her dreams. He shared insights from his own life, not as a billionaire lecturing from on high, but as an experienced individual offering perspective. He encouraged her critical thinking, challenged her assumptions, and celebrated her small victories. He taught her about business, about philanthropy, about the responsibilities that come with influence and resources. More importantly, he consistently reinforced his belief in her potential, reminding her that her unique perspective, born from her experiences in Oak Haven, was a strength, not a weakness. "Never forget where you came from, Maya," he once told her, "but never let it define the limits of where you can go." Maya, in turn, subtly influenced him. Her quiet integrity, her deep-seated empathy, her unpretentious wisdom. They chipped away at some of his own carefully constructed emotional barriers. He found himself looking forward to their conversations, finding in her youthful idealism a refreshing counterpoint to the often cynical world he inhabited. He started visiting community projects in underserved neighborhoods, not just for photo opportunities, but with a genuine interest, seeing them through a lens sharpened by Maya's quiet influence. The journey wasn't always smooth. There were moments of frustration, of cultural dissonance, of longing for the familiar, if difficult, simplicity of her old life. But with each challenge overcome, Maya grew stronger, more confident. The girl who had once sketched dreams in a tattered notebook was now engaging in sophisticated debates in her ethics class, excelling in advanced calculus, and designing even more ambitious projects for the regional science fairs, now with access to state-of-the-art labs. She never lost her quiet humility or her profound sense of responsibility. The heart of a hero and the mind of a leader were indeed taking root, nurtured by an unexpected friendship and an extraordinary opportunity. Years passed, marked by academic achievements and personal growth. Maya thrived at Northwood Academy, not by shedding her identity, but by integrating her past experiences with her present opportunities. She became a peer tutor in science, helping other students grasp complex concepts with the same patience and clarity she had once used to explain things to her little brother. She volunteered at a local community center in a neighborhood similar to Oak Haven, her connection to those facing struggles remaining deeply ingrained. Mr. Harrington watched her journey with a quiet pride that was almost paternal. He saw her navigate the complexities of adolescence and the challenges of a demanding academic environment with a grace and resilience that continually impressed him. Their mentorship deepened into a genuine friendship, a bond forged in shared respect and mutual admiration. Maya often said he had given her the world, but he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that she had given him something far more valuable, a renewed sense of purpose, a connection to a part of humanity he had long been insulated from. After graduating as valedictorian from Northwood, a moment that brought tears to her mother's eyes and a broad smile to Mr. Harrington's face, Maya chose to attend a prestigious university, majoring in environmental engineering with a minor in public policy. Her passion, ignited by that simple water filtration project in Oak Haven, had now found a sophisticated academic outlet. She was driven by a desire to use her scientific knowledge to address real-world problems, particularly those affecting underserved communities. During her university years, Maya didn't just excel academically, she became a voice. She co-founded a student organization dedicated to promoting sustainable development initiatives in low-income urban areas. She wrote articles for the university paper, her words carrying a quiet authority, her arguments well-reasoned and compassionate. She interned one summer at Harrison Global Ventures, not in a token position, but in their burgeoning sustainability division, where her insights and innovative ideas led to tangible changes in the company's environmental practices. Mr. Harrington, now semi-retired but still actively involved in his philanthropic foundation, often sought her input on projects related to community development and education. He valued her perspective, her ability to see both the macro challenges and the human-level impact. She wasn't afraid to challenge him, to push him to think differently, and he respected her for it. One of the most significant moments came when Maya, then in her final year of university, presented a proposal to the Harrington Foundation. It was an ambitious plan to establish a network of STEAM hubs, centers for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, in underserved neighborhoods, starting with Oak Haven. These hubs would provide access to resources, mentorship, and project-based learning opportunities for children who, like her younger self, had talent and curiosity but lacked the means to nurture them. Her presentation was brilliant. She combined rigorous data with compelling personal anecdotes, her passion for the project shining through every word. She spoke of the Maya Johnsons, who were still in places like Oakhaven, their potential untapped, their dreams constrained by circumstance. She wasn't just asking for funding. She was offering a vision, a scalable model for change. The Foundation's board, initially impressed by her credentials and Mr. Harrington's clear support, was utterly captivated by her presentation. The project was approved with unanimous support and a significant endowment. Maya, at just 22 years old, was tasked with leading its implementation. The day the first Oakhaven Steam Hub opened its doors was a day of profound celebration. It was a bright, modern facility filled with computers, 3D printers, science kits, and art supplies, a beacon of hope in the heart of the community. Maya stood beside Mr. Harrington at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Her mother, Sarah, now a confident administrator at a local nonprofit, and Leo, a bright high school student with a passion for coding, his bee allergy still carefully managed, beamed from the front row. As Maya spoke to the assembled crowd, community members, local leaders, excited children, her voice, once small and hesitant, was now clear, confident, and inspiring. She spoke of opportunity, of believing in the potential within every child, of the power of knowledge to transform lives. Mr. Harrington watched her, his eyes glistening. This was the fruition of that whispered belief in an alleyway years ago. The heart of a hero, the mind of a leader was not just on display. It was actively changing the world, one small, hopeful hub at a time. He knew then that his investment, born from a moment of profound gratitude, had yielded returns far beyond any financial measure. Maya's journey was a testament to the extraordinary power that lies dormant within the most unexpected individuals, waiting only for a catalyst, a moment of recognition, to be unleashed. The Oakhaven Steam Hub became a resounding success, a vibrant center of learning and innovation. Children who had once idled on street corners now eagerly experimented with robotics, coded their own simple video games, and designed solutions to local environmental challenges. Maya, while overseeing the expansion of the hub network to other communities, remained deeply connected to Oakhaven, mentoring young students, sharing her story, and constantly reminding them that their circumstances did not define their destiny. Her relationship with Mr. Harrington evolved further. He was no longer just a benefactor or a mentor. He was family, a cherished elder whose wisdom she valued and whose belief in her had been the wind beneath her wings. He, in turn, found immense joy in her accomplishments, seeing in her a legacy more meaningful than any business empire. He often told people that while he had built many things in his life, his greatest achievement was recognizing the potential in a 12-year-old girl in a rundown alley. The story of Maya Johnson and Arthur Harrington became a quiet legend, not one sensationalized by the media. Mr. Harrington had ensured that, respecting Maya's privacy, but one whispered in communities touched by their work, a story of hope, generosity, and the transformative power of human connection. It was a story that challenged assumptions about wealth and poverty, about who holds the power to save and who holds the power to inspire. Maya never forgot the fear and desperation of that day in the alley, nor the overwhelming wave of emotion when Mr. Harrington had truly seen her. Those memories fueled her determination, her unwavering commitment to creating opportunities for others. She understood that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. Her life's work became about bridging that gap. In her speeches, often delivered at conferences on education and social innovation, Maya would sometimes refer, obliquely, to a pivotal moment in her youth. She wouldn't name names or give dramatic details, but she would speak of the profound impact of someone believing in you before you fully believe in yourself, of the responsibility that comes with being given a chance. Each of us, she would say, her gaze sweeping across the audience, Her voice, imbued with a quiet passion, has the potential to be a catalyst in someone else's life. A kind word, an act of trust, a willingness to look beyond the surface. These are not small things. They can unlock doors, ignite dreams, and change the trajectory of a life. And in doing so, perhaps even change a small piece of the world. Her words resonated because they were authentic, born from lived experience. She was living proof of her own message. The girl from Oakhaven, who once sketched dreams in a tattered notebook and carried her brother's lifeline in a worn backpack, had indeed developed the heart of a hero and the mind of a leader. She hadn't just saved a billionaire's life that day. She had, in a way, saved a part of his soul, and in return, he had given her the tools to save so many more. Never assume you understand the full measure of a person by the clothes they wear, the neighborhood they live in, or the challenges they face. Within the quietest child, the most overlooked individual, can reside a universe of potential, a spark of brilliance waiting for the oxygen of opportunity. And if you are ever in a position to offer that spark, to whisper a word of belief that can make someone's spirits soar, remember Maya. Remember Mr. Harrington. For in those moments of connection, of seeing and validating the inherent worth in another, lies the power to not only change a life, but to enrich our collective humanity. What hidden talents are you overlooking in those around you? And what heroic heart might be waiting for your belief to help it find its voice?